With the pre-launch of my upcoming Advanced Frontends course, I wanted to create a preloader animation with the logo. While I may not end up using this, I figured some of you would be interested in the process of how I created this, which utilizes both SVG and the GridSock animation platform to handle the sequence animations. With that said, let's get started. If you enjoyed this video, check out DesignCourse.com where you can learn UI, UX, CSS, and more with my custom interactive platform that makes learning fun and easy. All right, so here I am in a brand new project. We just have some initial HTML right here. We're linking to a CSS main.css, and then in our CSS folder, we have a main.sass file with just one rule set for the background color. So I'm watching this sass file to make sure it updates when I save, and I'm also looking at this open with live server. Port 5501, and at the state we have right now, it's just this beige color essentially. So now let's switch over here to the Illustrator file, and that's what I use to design this. And this is basically the Advanced Frontends logo. And I have this structured in a particular way for animation purposes when I export it as SVG. So the first is, if you look over here in the actual layers, we have 3 different layers. So in Illustrator, I would just hit new layer, and each separate thing that I want to animate and control with GridSock, I will just place into its own layer. Now, you don't have to use Adobe Illustrator if you don't have it. I know it's a paid version, but anything that's capable of exporting SVG, you can use, and there's probably going to be a similar, structure here. The reason I'm putting these in their own layers is because when you export as SVG within Illustrator, it will create groups with that name and those layer structures in the SVG itself. And so it's just going to help me easier be able to identify what I need to animate. And so this, like I said, this is the logo, and it's all outlined too. So even though it's text, I can't edit the text. It has to be converted to outline in order for it to work with SVG properly. So let's say, for instance, I had the type advanced right here. We can't see it because it's black on black. And we scale this thing up. You don't want it to be editable text before you edit it like that. You want it to be, there we go. You want it to be converted to outline. So the keyboard shortcut is Control-Shift-O, and that converts it into editable paths, essentially. So you can no longer edit the text, but you can edit the paths and stuff like that. So that's also required. That's what these are as well. All right. So my idea behind this logo is Advanced Frontends. The animation idea that I had is initially it will just start like this, and this element will come in with split text where we take each letter and fade it in an interesting way. And then same thing with this from the opposite direction. And then it's going to kind of just push over, and then we're going to introduce this arrow element that will fall into place into the logo, and then fade this stuff back out, and then take this arrow and kind of do some interesting stuff with it, And so the possibilities are essentially endless. And so when you're ready to export this, you don't want it to have a background like this. So the actual size of the artboard is the size of the type in here. And at this point, when it's, there's a transparent background, all that good stuff, it's just File, Save As, and on your computer. And then we choose down here, SVG, and then just export the SVG as a file. It also gives you the option to copy the text as well for the code. And so for me, that exported code looks like this. So I'm just going to paste it right here in the HTML document. There's a lot of stuff, obviously. There's a lot of code. So there's a few things we can get rid of first. So I'm going to get rid of these top 2 lines. I'm going to get rid of the version here. I'm going to get rid of the XLMNS, stuff like that. All right. That looks good. Okay. It does have some initial CSS here I'm not worried about, but we can see the groups here. So ID is advanced. Here's front ends. And then here's the arrow. So it makes it really easy just to set up and get rocking right away. So if we save this, we'll see at this point in time, we can't even see the logo. That's because we need to go over to the main file here. And we're just going to give it the SVG itself, a width of 20 viewport width, and overflow is going to be visible. If we don't do overflow visible, the SVG container itself acts like a mask. So like if I move that arrow around and I want it to push at the very bottom of the viewport, then it's going to get hidden by the defining boundaries of the SVG. But overflow visible helps prevent that. All right, so we can't see it because we're dealing with this background here. So what I want to do first is create an overlay element. And that's going to be the only other HTML we're going to deal with here. And this overlay element, we're going to show initially, so it's called div class reveal. Let's get this stuff all properly tabbed up here. Okay, and its purpose is to show initially, it'll be position absolute, and then we'll use GreenSock Animation Platform to reveal it and do scale Y0 from a transform origin of top to reveal a user interface underneath of it or something like that. So that's the idea at least. So if we go back to our CSS, and we can go ahead and just paste in this. So this is the rule set, reveal. And it's position absolute, height 100 viewport height, width 100%, top left 0, z-index -1, background is going to be dark actually. So if we save this, we should see this right here. This is exactly what we want right here. Okay, so at this point, there's another thing I wanted to do, and this is real important, and this is for helping you kind of deal with the issue of FOUC, which is flash of unwanted content. So you can see we have a G element, which is, everything is encapsulated inside of a group here. And what we want to do initially, because the initial part of the animation should be 0, there should be nothing here. It should just be all the black background. And then these letters are going to fade in. So what we do is we set visibility hidden. This is the most important part right here, visibility hidden. Because once we save that, guess what? We don't see it anymore, all right? So then, now what we're gonna do is use JavaScript and GreenSock in order to get that to reveal itself in such a way. So you'll see what I mean here in a second. So the first thing we wanna do is we're just gonna use GreenSock itself. So if you go to Google and you type GSAP CDN, GSAP3 CDN, the top result will give you this code right here. All right, so it's just a Cloudflare CDN for GreenSock Animation Platform. And then we'll use, not all capital, just some inline JavaScript here. And let's create an actual timeline, because this is definitely a timeline-based animation because it's very complex. There's multiple steps. So we're gonna say const timeline equals gsap.timeline. We're gonna have some defaults here in an object. So it's gonna be ease, power4 out. If you don't know what easings are, just type in GSAP eases in Google. You'll find the top result in their documentation, and there's an interactive editor that'll allow you to choose custom easing, which affects how your animation plays out over time. Additionally, we're also going to have a default duration of 0.7 seconds. So now all these defaults will apply to each individual tween that's a part of this timeline animation. Now, before we actually get to the timeline animation part, we have to set some things with the set method. So we say gsap set, and we're going to set our group, which we just defined right here with visibility hidden. We're going to define it with auto alpha 1. All right, so auto alpha 1 will change both visibility and opacity, and it'll increase that value to 1. So now if we go back here and we refresh, we're going to see it again. Whereas if we just delete this, we're not going to see it. This will essentially bring it back. And this is to help deal with flash of unwanted content. I'll try to remember to show you exactly what that is and how this helps fix it near the end of the video. So outside of that, we're also going to set a couple other things. Right now, we don't want to see the arrow, and we don't want front ends to be pushed over here with this little white space. We want it to start right here because we want the arrow to come in and push front ends over to the right. So we have to specify, we have to get the selector for front ends specifically, and set the X position offset enough so that it's lined right on the same column as advanced where it starts. So we'll say gsap set, and I think they're using IDs here, so it's going to be front ends. And we're going to say X% -10. Now if we save this, there we go. Now we still see the arrow, so it's kind of screwed up, and we're going to fix that now as well here in a second. But for now, I'm going to also use GSAP2, SVG. So we're selecting the entire SVG, and we're going to scale 1.2 for a duration of 4 seconds. What that's going to do is it's going to take the entire SVG animation while we start animating other elements that are a part of it and just slowly grow it to 1.2 instead of just 1. And so you'll see now when we refresh, you'll see it grow for a period of 4 seconds. You can see how it's kind of slowly just growing in. All right, so this is a simple tween that's not a part of a timeline, which you can completely do. All right. So let's get started here. We're going to say timeline from, and we're going to say first our text. So advanced and ST1 class. That's the selector. Because if we go all the way up and we find advanced, here's the group, there's the ID advanced, and then we look at the classes ST1. That each class of ST1 is applied to each individual letter. It's important to understand that because then you'll understand that we can do this following really cool thing. So here's what it is. We specify in the object in the properties portion, we're going to put y% negative 200. And if I just save this and we look at what's happening, you'll see it's just all coming down. All right. So what we want to do additionally is we want to stagger of 0.03. So it's a very quick stagger. There we go. So now it's looking a little bit more interesting. You can see it kind of come down. It's a lot more smooth than what the video is portraying. It's buttery smooth on my computer. The video frame rate is going to affect that. Now we could do some other really cool things to make it even more interesting, like skew Y, for instance, of 60. All right, let's see what that does. All right, so if I zoom up just so we can see it. All right, that's cool. Let's do a skew X of 30 and a scale Y of 0.9 and an opacity of 0. So it's coming all from these values to the original values. So let's try it again. Very cool. So that's our first tween that's a part of the timeline. I like to take these and chain them together. So I'll tab them in. And now we're going to do something very similar to the front end's text, which kind of already almost has it. GitHub Copilot has it correct, but almost, but not quite. So I'm just going to repaste those values. They're pretty similar. We don't have a negative value here for y%. This is for the second text that says front ends at the bottom. Staggers 0.3, scales 0.5 at this point in time. 60 and 30, same values there, and then opacity 0. So it's almost all the same. And if we save it, you'll see it comes in like that. Let's try that again. But I want to do an offset so it occurs quicker and while the top one is also being introduced. So we do that by putting in the third parameter, a negative 0.7 or so. And you could experiment with these values and the timing of them on your own. And now they're all coming in. They're coming in quicker. Okay. Outside of that, let's create yet another one. And this time we're going to say to. We're going to use a to method. And this is just going to be our front end's text. This is where we're going to push it over to the right. So we're going to say X% negative. I found 107 to work well. Opacity will be 0. Oh, sorry. I was looking at the wrong reference code. This X% is going to be 0 because we want it to go in its default starting point from where we imported it essentially. And then we also want to do an ease. I'm going to do a custom ease of elastic. So if I put elastic, well, let's just wait until, let's just see what this does. And then we're going to put a positive offset of 1.3 seconds. Because we want that animation to kind of come in and then push over. There you go. So if we see that again, notice how it pushes over. But I kind of want it to have like an elastic feel. So we'll say ease elastic dot out. You could do out, you could do in, or you could do in, out in camel case. And you could just experiment with those. And you could also experiment with the two parameters that are a part of this function right here. I found that 1 and 0.5 work well. Now you'll see that how it kind of has this elastic animation like that. And you can really exaggerate it by playing with these values right here. After that, we're going to have a from, and this is going to be our arrow. So our arrow is in a selector called, if I zoom up, arrow and st1. And we're going to open that up as an x% -107. I couldn't use 100% because I could still see the tip of the arrow. And then we're going to do an opacity of 0. And once again, the same type of ease, like that. And then a negative offset of negative equals 0.7. Let's save it and let's see now. Now we don't see that arrow by default because we're using a from, which is setting the opacity to 0, so you can't see it, and also an x% of -107. So if we refresh this, look at that. Let's try it again. Where you probably couldn't see that because of me. There we go. Very cool. Okay, let's continue on. After that point, we can go ahead and we'll work on animating out the first piece of text, which is advanced for advanced front ends. So we're going to use two methods. So we'll use advanced.st1. And for this, I'm just going to paste these properties in because I think you get the point, and I kind of want this to move along a little bit faster. This time, we're going to give it a positive time offset, so it's going to happen plus 1 second later than what it normally would, essentially. We're just doing a skew. We're doing an X where we kind of push everything off to the right. A scale X of 0, a stagger of 0.03, opacity 0, duration of 0.2. So let's just see what that looks like. See that? How it kind of just swipes off the screen. All right, so let's also do the front ends text in a very similar manner. So I'm just pasting this in. Here's front ends st1. It's a 2 method, skew x and an x30. It's the same thing as the values at the top, essentially. So if I zoom up, okay, now we could take this arrow and kind of push through at the same time, which kind of makes it look like it's knocking out that text. All right, so for that, it's another 2, and we're selecting our arrow this time. And so here's the new code. X% is going to be 200. We're pushing over 200. Opacity is going to be, I'm not sure why I would put opacity 1, because we can already see it. So let's just delete that. And then this right here means to start at the same time as the previous value. All right, so that's real important to understand. Now look at that. Now that elastic easing is what makes it bounce, just like that. All right, so that's cool. Now what we can do is we can turn that arrow and then make it shoot down and then pull up the page reveal animation. So to do that, we're gonna have a few more steps here. So we're taking this, we're gonna rotate on the Z-axis -90, transform origin as center. When we add this, you'll see after that last portion, it's gonna push over in the middle and then rotate. There we go. And then we're going to do another one on the same element. X% is going to be 1700, or Y% rather. So it's going to push it down to the bottom, near the bottom of the viewport. And then we'll also have a negative offset here to kind of get this stuff happening quickly. Just like that. That's that new portion. Now, for me personally, I would think that this kind of like a loading graphic or intro animation is a little bit too lengthy. So I'm probably going to change this up, but I did want to show you how to do this and how easy it is to make complex animations. Here's another one where we then take the X% or Y% and put a negative value. Probably make this even larger. And then we're using ease of back in. Again, use that editor on their website. Duration 0.5, negative offset. Let's see what happens here. So then it should shoot up after being down. Here it goes down and then up, just like that. All right, after that we have one more. That's to take the reveal and do a scale Y of 0. So we do a to method, we select the reveal div, scale y is 0, transform origins top so that it goes from the bottom and reveals up, the same direction as that arrow, kind of pulling it up. Duration 1.2, power 4 in out, negative offset. Here is the final look. So what's cool is you could have a full user interface that reveals right here. And that way you kind of, if you have a kind of like a content heavy site with a lot of media and things that need to download, this could happen like right after the loading graphic starts or something like that. For me personally, I would want this to be a little bit faster. I would say 3 seconds max for an animation. I think this is more like 4. But now with these tools that you have, you can integrate these in a million different contexts, not just a loading graphic. You could do this in many different ways on a website. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to check out designcourse.com/AF for advanced front ends, which we'll be releasing as a pre-release in like approximately 2 weeks. And it's an early access 1 week period where you'll be able to see exactly what I do to create advanced front ends, and you learn it from the bottom up. And just to show you real quickly the actual course, if I log in off screen real quickly, which I'm gonna do, so hang on with me real tight. Let's there we go. Yeah, so like Greenstock Animation Platform Basics, these are all project based too. There's even code modules. So like Tasty Hamburger, it's like, wow, how do we create that? Well, we have to start the challenge and it doesn't work. It's up to you to fix it, using what you learned throughout the course to work with the JavaScript over here and check out, this stuff, and you can see all the different objectives. And so it's not just video. This is a really elaborate custom system that we built for learning interactive advanced front ends.